Welcome to the Deep Dive into Agile Marketing podcast with your host, John Cass. Together, we'll take a closer look at the ins and outs of marketing through an agile lens. You'll learn from interviews with top agile thought leaders and practitioners and gain fresh new insights for your journey. Let's get ready to dive in.
Welcome to the Deep Dive into Agile Marketing podcast. I'm your host, John Cass, here in Boston, Massachusetts. Today, I'll be interviewing Todd Baylor, president and founder of AgileBD, which is a consulting company providing compelling GovCon value propositions. Welcome, Todd. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive into Agile Marketing podcast.
Thank you, John. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you're here because my background is obviously in marketing, but also, a number of years in sales and also business development. So I love that topic, the combination. So I'm really glad you're here. Todd, given your expertise in business development for government contractors, I'm curious, how have you seen agile methodologies help sales teams navigate and adapt to complex, high-stakes sales environments? Specifically, how does agile support tailoring strategies in a real time as priorities shift and stakeholder needs evolve?
Well, you mentioned your background is in marketing. My background is actually in software development. So my degrees are in computer science. And I came up, I was a software engineer when I started out. And then I started managing teams of software engineers and then programs of software engineers or product development teams on both the commercial and the government side. And then I gradually shifted over into what I consider the hardest part of the business, which is growing the business or winning new business. So I came into business development with a software development background and gradually started seeing the opportunities to apply agile techniques that I learned in the software world to the business development world. And now since talking to you, I've started to make the connection into the marketing world. And I had always considered marketing to be more of a general purpose, brand awareness, lead generation type of field. And then there was sort of a break in the chain. And then sales was was for purposes of winning sales and closing deals. And now I had, so I've always been on the closing deals side of things. And to me, it was always salespeople when they would present, to customers, they would present capabilities decks and general purpose kind of things that I would consider more appropriate for marketing. And I wanted, as I worked with them, I tried to get them to focus more on specific solutions, specific value propositions to specific customers that would solve their problems and get them promotions and do all other kind of good things. And since talking to you and learning the concept of account-based marketing and agile marketing, I understand that there is a marketing mindset of not going general purpose broad in the beginning and actually, trying out value propositions on specific customers or small subsets of customers, and then learning from that interaction and adjusting for further marketing efforts, or in my case, for further, to further the solution sale at a particular customer. So I'm very interested in this new appreciation that you've given me on sort of that there is not a break in the chain between marketing, and it's not just we'll generate the leads, you go close the leads. It is more of we'll start the value proposition to the customer, and you can further decompose and make more explicit and more whatever the value proposition to the customer all the way through in my world, which ends in proposals, formal proposals to an agency possibly an orals presentation to an agency where the actual competition is won and lost.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, the way what I really like about the concept of account-based marketing, and this comes from working 10 years in sales and oh my gosh, 25 years in marketing now. Oh my goodness. Is it's this partnership between the two areas where because of the strategy, I mean, you think of inbound marketing or content marketing, which has been a theme for 20 years or also, where the idea was that you have a particular client need, you think of the messaging, and then you produce content to an entire marketplace, usually using social media or online media to do it. And then you get leads in, which you have to win you out because sometimes the messaging doesn't work. Whereas account-based marketing is you don't focus on the entire market. You only pick, say, 100 companies to start off with, and then you do really expert research at the level that a sales or a business development person would do, but in partnership with marketers so that they can help out with additional information and the tools that they have, and then you come up with a value proposition, as you mentioned, that's specific to that customer so that you can then over time discover what value propositions which work for a particular customer but are in the end perhaps going to work for more customers over time. So it reverses the funnel. Instead of it being a funnel, it's a pyramid, and that's and it changes that relationship and brings closer marketers and business development people as a result.
That is the exact metaphor that I use is a pyramid, and that you need to view, and from my perspective, the pyramid is of a value proposition, and that you need to present the pyramid to your customers from the top down, because it's, value propositions exist at many different levels of abstraction, all the way up to just the initial phrasing about a solution, down to the detailed proposal. And you need to present the pyramid from the top down because that's how people learn. That's even how agencies learn. And if you do it, often business development approaches, just like software used to do, tried to get the whole pyramid built just by figuring it out. And it turns out it's better to just present the top of the pyramid to the customer, let them tell you what they like, what they don't like about it, then build the next layer of the pyramid. And customers love to be engaged that way in the construction of your pyramid, as opposed to just being recipients of the bottom of your pyramid, and it turns out that they love to be engaged in that process. They end up getting much more of what they want from that process. A lot of it, Agile has a bit of magic in it to me. I think that it was really a concept that moved many areas forward when it was created just at the beginning of this century.
And it is, and it's perfect for the sales and business development profession because that's often how they work, right? I mean, I worked in sales 10 times and 10 years, and many times I'd go to a new industry or a new market, and I would start off with an initial script, and after the first year or so, I realized, oh, I'm going to fail, but that's okay because I'm going to learn through the process, and my customers are going to help me. I love that description that you had where the customer wants to work with you. It actually makes me think, Todd, that actually salespeople and business development people are the perfect. They're better at market research than anyone because
They
they.
really are. And
Yeah.
that's why they hate, doing call plans and detailed plans when the best ones would be rather be out there talking with customers.
Right.
Because it turns out customers don't punish you for not presenting them the perfect thing the first time.
Right.
They will happily engage you and correct you and expect, you to listen to them. And it's just the value in that interaction is not in your presentation, it's in the listening. And for all the time if you build the whole listening and feedback loop into your process, they like it better. You end up with something that they will like better. Everybody benefits, and it's so much more efficient.
Right, right. No, completely agree. It's that effort to build that relationship, and building a relationship requires that you have understanding. So in its very description, it's that process of listening. But tying it back to agile, you don't know what's going to happen, and so you're not starting off with a waterfall plan. You're starting off with a small plan that grows from there. I mean, how have you applied that to situations working with clients and customers?
And it really is very similar to agile software development. You come up with what you think that they want, but it's at the high level of abstraction. You try it out on them, and if you get a spark of interest, maybe you turn that into a white paper. You don't start developing your proposal right away. Maybe you turn it into a solution visualization, which I find to be very important in our industry. And maybe your whole next meeting with them is over a picture of how you think they might achieve their vision. And that's a really good meeting because your picture will be wrong. And it's okay that it's wrong or not perfect because you're now talking about not a general purpose thing, but actually a future that they want to achieve. So they will engage with you happily. And, maybe the next time you get there with them, you present a more fuller solution. Then maybe it's all the way down to the proposal where it's a completely fully and priced solution. So I just like the focus on the value proposition, anticipate that it will not be perfect, anticipate that you're going to be learning and correcting and taking feedback throughout the whole process, and that is all healthy. It's not something to cringe, if you're going to be corrected by your customer. Build that learning into your process, expect it, optimize it.
Great, great.
Hey marketers, Deborah Eckerling here.
And I'm Keith Smith, and we host the MPN Meta Marketing Show, which is not just another marketing podcast, but the marketing podcast about all the other marketing podcasts.
Podcasts are booming, right? We love them, and people actually listen. They don't scroll, they don't swipe, well, except maybe during the ad breaks.
But here's the secret. With the Marketing Podcast Network, your ads don't make people hit skip. We put your brand on shows that people actually want to hear.
That's right. We match your message with podcasts that make marketing nerds like us perk up and take notes, or at least nod knowingly, pretending they understand.
And don't worry, because we'll deliver your ad naturally. People might even think that we love your brand personally, which of course we totally do, unless it's a veggie smoothie, then maybe not.
If you want your brand heard without making listeners roll their eyes,
head to marketingpodcasts.net and catch marketing fans at work, rest and play. Seriously, your audience is already listening. Make sure they hear your brand and not our awkward jokes.
Join the conversation, because good ads shouldn't just be tolerated, they should be enjoyed.
Yes!
Let's go to our sponsor. So part of the process with ABM is that you go through a research stage. And I think the best example I've seen in my career was when there was a client that we were working with, and that client was selling digital transformation services to IT departments. Now, it just so happened that for one particular client, there was a CIO who'd been there for like 6 years and had gone through a digital transformation. And if you did the research, you would see that he was very proud of that and was saying we've saved this many millions of dollars and we've done this and that. And so if you went to that particular company and said, we're pitching the value of digital transformation at the beginning stage, it's the wrong message. It would have basically turned him off. So how important is it, do you think, to do research in ABM, but also what's too much and what is enough, as it were?
Too much and not enough. That's probably more the art form of marketing. But you cannot go in front of a customer without having done in an ABM setting, without having done your homework, because that will turn a customer off, is that you're presenting something and you haven't even gone to the, you haven't even done the respectful thing of finding out where they are, and you're trying to tell them where they should go. So, it's not so agile as to just throw spaghetti on the wall. You gotta understand what kind of, where they are, and you know, present them, and actually you've got to tell them, we've done our best to hear you, to hear what you've put out, and we think that you're here, and we think that something like this may enable you to get where you want to go. So I will say that research can never be avoided. It may be minimized. It may be, minimized through the use of consultants that already know the customer and things like that. But you cannot go in with generic stuff. And actually, that's how many federal business developers fail. They go in with the stuff that they're proud of, which is all their capabilities. And it's like, look at all my hammers, even though you aren't even telling me that you have nails that need to go in. It's just because I want to talk about my hammers, because that's what I'm proud of. And you just can't have that. That will turn a customer off immediately.
That makes absolute sense. And again, it's not following the strategy, which is to listen to the customer, to have a conversation with them about what it is, and to have a good conversation, you have to do a little bit of research before that. So in working with your clients, I mean, how do you come up with the different methods to reach them? How do you go through the process of coming up with sort of new ideas, and how do you use Agile to help them manage that process?
So, for example, at the top of the pyramid, I tell them that they should be attending, in terms of federal agencies, go listen to what the leadership of these agencies are saying at industry events, because often they will publish their strategic plans, but a lot of times those strategic plans are written by consultants and don't really reflect what's top of mind of the agency leadership. Usually what they present at public events does reflect what's top of mind. So I like to start from there. And then if you have salespeople that attend those events, they can just be trying out little taglines, jotting them down during the presentation, approach the person after the meeting and say, are you sort of trying to do something like this? And if they say yes, or if it seems that, they can follow up with a white paper. I would always suggest, to me, it's always critical. I coach clients that a single picture can sell any solution, can sell every solution if it's well done, and that they should try to do that in every deal, is come up with that single vision that they can talk about with the customers and say, is this sort of what you're trying to do? And this should be an agency picture, not a company picture, that presents a vision that they can get on board. I say the ultimate dynamic is that this is a picture that would end up on one of their walls as a vision that they want to achieve. And if you can get there, you can get a customer to yes well before any solicitation drops or anything like that. And I caution that if a competitor gets in there and gets their picture in their mind, you're going to lose the deal, because it's just the way it is. So these are some of the techniques that I use to take a more agile approach. Don't just go off and do your analysis and then present a proposal. That's probably going to lose to somebody who engaged with them around where they want to go.
Right. So what do you see the value then of marketers and business development people working together? Because I think the partnership, and this is the interesting thing, right? So marketers traditionally wouldn't get down to the level of an individual account. They wouldn't do that. But account-based marketing changes that around, because the exercise is to determine what the value proposition is for the individual client, and the value as seen to marketing and the company as a whole. Well, one, it might be a complex, highly valued account, in which case, it's worth doing having a marketer on site doing that. But then secondly, it's this process where maybe it's a white paper, maybe it's an ROI generator, something like that, or maybe it's a blog post, that will work for a particular individual, whatever it will be. But by going through those processes, you'll collect a series of value propositions that might work individually for one company, but then you try it on the other clients as well, because you do the research and you say, hey, they sort of have a similar situation to that other client. Why don't we try this situation? So the marketer isn't there having a conversation with the client, but they're sort of the partner behind the scene. How do you think that relationship changes the opportunity that you have? And then on the other side of it, business development, right? They're sort of involved in marketing more, sort of directing and having a much more open conversation about what they need instead of this demand level where what would happen is that salespeople would say, "Oh, well, we need this," and the marketer would say, "Well, I'm doing these other 25 things, and now you want me to focus on this." Well, now it's this partnership where you do get that sort of focus. How do you see that playing out in those situations?
I will say that prior to talking with you, I had viewed marketing as not that useful in business development because I other than brand awareness, and I recognize the importance of brand awareness in, for going after prospective customers. But now what I realize is marketers, for one, are some of the best people at conveying value in extremely concise terms and, at a glance kind of visuals. And those are necessary. Those are critical tools. If we call this fishing, the marketers are the best at building the hooks. And business development people are not. And certainly the people further down the line, the capture folks, the proposal folks in my world are really not good at that at all. So I embrace this new thing of saying, when you have when you're just trying to get the hooks, so that you can follow up with the white paper or things like that, the marketers are the people who are best at that stuff. So now they're on the team because they're the ones building the hooks that are they're not even just for leads. They're for introducing your value proposition in a way that you can follow up with a meeting or a white paper or a visual or a thing like that. So they're really just an integral part of the continuum. They are the tip of the spear, or they're building the tip of the spear.
And that's not to say that sales and business development people don't have a great role in. I mean, they're the best people to find the hungry fish, as it were.
They're the people. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I really see it as a partnership, and it's one reason why I really like that concept and strategy. I mean, it's not new, but it's combining things in a different way, and that's why it's so interesting. Well, the other thing that's interesting to me, Todd, is that I've seen situations where actually Agile's been given to the sales teams for the first time in account-based marketing, and then also marketing brought in as well. So to me, I've seen a lot of instances where ABM, where Agile is the management process. I think which I think is really interesting. I mean, why do you think Agile is such a good technique for ABM and this melding of the two professions within it?
Yeah, I'll say, I just think I am more a fan of Agile, the concept, than Agile, the ceremonies and, the Jira and the detailed management of day-to-day kind of things. I think that the magic is in, again, the concept of don't expect to have things right. Instead, take your best shot and don't be afraid that your customer's not going to like it if it's not perfect the first time. Expect them to not like it the first time. That is actually a good exchange. That's a good dynamic to build. It sort of shows your customer your vulnerability, which is a good way to build any relationship. So that's just my thoughts in that direction.
Well, I like that transparency angle, and I think that Agile definitely does that. And I think it's an aspect of it within the professions, right? Because I think it's very true. Business development and salespeople, they go out and they fail all the time, and that's okay, and they learn from the failing, right? And for marketers, a part of our profession's quandary, I think, is that we can't say that we don't know something or that we have to be perfect, right? And
Yeah.
that's why, actually, I think, and it's very true. You talk about customs and traditions in marketing, how agile has developed in the marketing profession. It's always a high, you basically ask anyone from, and this is across all companies, usually they end up with hybrid, which is some combination of things. So unlike the IT professional or developers, the focus is on getting, results. Sorry. Let me rephrase that. Just because of the chaotic nature of the sales process and the marketing process, whereas within an IT process, it's a much more controlled environment. Obviously, there's always going to be changes and chaotic things happening, like a server going down, or somebody goes out, or something like that. But because of the nature of new business, it's always chaotic, and so therefore it's harder to control it. And I think this is one of the reasons why in the marketing profession they lean towards a little bit more less rigid and more flexible approach to using agile. So partly what I was asking was, how does agile help in this process of both managing the process, and you talked about that, but also sort of helping with the culture of how marketers and business development people talk together and they work together.
Yeah. So I think that in the same way that marketing may not have been an agile kind of process early on, it might be because their initial product immediately went to the mass market. And you can't have it be wrong when it's going to the mass market. It can be a little wrong if it's going to a subset, or a smaller part of the market. This is very similar to there are plenty of things in IT that don't lend themselves to agile. Infrastructure used to be that way. Databases used to be that way. You've got to get the structure right. You can't just test it, fill it with data, and then adjust your database structure. Things are changing now, but in the same way that if you're talking, mass marketing, I'm not sure Agile, I guess they have their own way of doing Agile with more test groups and things like that. There are the same trade-offs between trying to get everything right before you touch the customer and embracing the imperfections as part of your customer interaction. And I think that there's places for both.
Great.
Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 125,000 bonus miles for a limited time through October 29th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends October 29th, 2025.
Let's go to our sponsor. Well, so we've seen the buzz and sometimes the hysteria around AI, but beyond the headlines, the real question is, how can AI actually support business development in meaningful ways? What does its rise mean for how we apply agile principles in sales and marketing? Do you think the conversation needs to shift from hype to practical impact, or how AI can help teams adapt faster, personalize outreach, and make smarter decisions to complex, evolving markets?
I mean, the conversation does need to shift from hype to more practical things, but it already has, at least in my world. And I will say that what I've found is, so in terms of federal business development, AI has come in most from the proposal creation in terms of that part of the activity, the proposal management, because it is so incredibly wonderful at generating words of proposals against, given a set of instructions. So there are AI tools that now say, in effect, you can feed in a request for proposal, a solicitation, and use a corpus of your company information, including your previous proposals, and we'll generate a response to this proposal that is compliant and semi-compelling and structured well. And the writing in these things that are developed is exquisite. I am so impressed with the writing of AI. However, from my perspective, and this changes with different people, but the visual part of a value presentation to me is so important. And it cannot be, the weaker proposals are written, you write all the words first, and then you find where you can decorate with pictures. And from my perspective, I'd actually rather see a picture of the solution first and have the words describe that picture, or at least have them be co-partners, interleaving your value decomposition. And AI is not good at that at all. And so they can say that they will generate an 80% compliant proposal. And on first read, you will say, this might even be more than 80%. But if you then try to say, I want to lead my reader through the decomposition of this value through visualization and words that describe those visualizations, you find that 80% quickly drops down to 20%. And because you have to restructure how you want to most compellingly present that value. So that's sort of my cutting edge area of interest is right now. I'm sure this is a temporary situation, but it's almost as if the large language models need to become, or they need to be supplemented with large spatial communication models, which is a completely different model of communication. And that's where I think that AI has a long way to go.
That's really interesting, and I totally get your point there, which is that, the names in itself, which is it's a large language, it's about text rather than spatial concepts. So combining the two, yeah, it'll be exciting to see how that develops over time, because there's certainly issues there as well. Well, how do you think? You've talked about there's good practical use of AI, especially in terms of content generation for the quality. But also, I think interestingly, in your field with government contracts, you mention about compliance, and that also, of course, applies to highly complex places like financial or biotechnology or pharmaceutical, right? Those constraints really and the requirement to meet compliance areas. So could you talk a little bit more about that, how AI can make sure that you're keeping within the compliance standards?
Yeah, using AI tools for compliance, or I should say not using them for compliance, can now be termed malpractice in my world. They are so good at it. And I'll also add the other place where AI is really, really good is even in I won't say lead generation, but identifying the upcoming opportunities that your company might be able to compete for. And that's a thankless job that is really well done by AI tools now. So they can look at sam.gov for those of your listeners who are familiar with the federal procurement planning and publication system, or other outlets for upcoming federal procurements. AI is great at scraping those sites, identifying what your capabilities are, where you might fit, what might be your target pipeline for you to then prosecute.
Yeah, and going back to ABM, that was kind of a part of the whole puzzle there, which is that technology companies came along and they addressed this issue of how do you find leads and at what stage of development. And so marketers, as it were, started providing a bunch of tools for the business development people on helping with qualifying leads even before you reach out to them, because you know that they're at the right stage. Even to the point, and I hope this isn't being done with our federal government for security purposes, but even to the stage of watching whether a particular company, commercial company that is interacting with certain websites, and so therefore that's telling you that there are indicators for buying signals going on. I definitely hope that we can't do that with the federal government. So, but it sort of gets back to this, right, Todd, which is marketers can come in and they can help with a bunch of resources. I mean, how do you think that is going to develop over time in your area?
I mean, I can imagine using AI now on the marketing, again, the tip of that spear, to generate potential taglines for a particular opportunity, that you can then select from, as opposed to generating from your head. I really don't think it will be long until AI can start generating these solution visualizations that might be appropriate for a given opportunity. I don't think they're there yet, but I don't think it's going to be long, again, till they start to actually generate that stuff. Right now, what you see, right now, the stuff that's generated by AI sort of sticks out like a sore thumb. It's the kind of thing that you see on LinkedIn, where you can see people just used an AI thing to get some sort of metaphor or some cute thing. And it's sort of cringy still. You would not dare put that in a federal proposal or even in federal marketing material, I don't think. It's still maybe okay for social media and things like that, but it's got to get better.
Right. How do you think that Agile affects this process, both the ABM process and the use of AI? I mean, so Agile, as it were, is this process, even if it's loosely used, of understanding what work you must do and helping you to understand how, what you focus on. I mean, I always think, Todd, that agile's the wrong word. It should really be focused, so that you spend the time that you need to do the thing that's going to be the most value. If you've got this opportunity with AI where it's going to speed up the process, does that mean that we end up doing more work? And is that a problem? Does it mean that we're going to get too much content? How do we still make sure that we're focused using Agile, even in these days of AI?
I think of AI as now something that you should ask, what's the best way to do this thing that I'm about to do, on almost everything that you're about to do. So I am very impressed with the technology. I think that we should all embrace it. And the best way to embrace it is, I have to do this thing, today. This thing is on my list of stuff to do. How should I do it? And you can always not do what's recommended to you, but so often that will be a positive exchange, because you'll either have it listed out in steps 1 through 5, or it'll identify step 3 that you didn't even think about. And then it might even be able to do step 3 for you, So I think when in doubt, ask AI, ask AI to do it for you. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. I think we will all quickly adapt our filters and expectations to not have it overwhelm us. And really, again, the tools are so phenomenal that you can really tell them, don't overwhelm me with too much. Here's how much I want, and they'll give you what you want. I'm still really trying to figure out where, what people say is AI will never have understanding built into it. It will never understand even what it produces. And that's where you don't have to fear that we're going to be permanently taken out of the loop, because at least from a business development perspective, there needs to be a broad understanding of the value, not just a good description of the value.
Well, Todd, so what do you think about the future in terms of the use of Agile for those business development exchanges going forward?
Well, my company is named AgileBD, so I think that there is a lot of room for things to head in that direction. Right now, you cannot propose to do software development anymore using a waterfall model. It is just purely viewed as non-competitive and arcane. It would be my hope that in 5 years, business development is thought of the same way, that laying out a bunch of identify, qualify, capture, proposal kind of phases and marching through the phases is viewed as something that is non-competitive and not worth doing. So obviously, I think there's a big future in agile business development.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, Todd, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed the conversation today because of that discussion about ABM and getting back into these discussions about sales. Thank you for joining us.
Well, it has absolutely been my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, John.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive into Agile Marketing with John Cass. My thanks to Todd, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Deep Dive into Agile Marketing podcast. Be sure and subscribe to our show and leave a review to let us know what you thought of today's episode.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkis-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkisporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.